Welcome to Impact Makers Radio, featuring industry thought leaders sharing problem-solving insights to help grow your business and live the life you love. And here's your host, Stewart Andrew Alexander.
Hi, and welcome to another Let's Talk Divorce conversation. And during this segment of the show, I have family law litigator and mediator Rachel Virk of Rachel Virk PC, calling in all the way from Northern Virginia. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Rachel, who is considered to be a leader in the area of family law, will be talking to you today about a very interesting topic. You see, Rachel has taken some time out of her day to come and speak to you about how do you decide whether to litigate or to settle. Now, sounds like a very interesting topic, so I can't wait to bring her onto the show. So if you are one of the many divorcing couples in the Northern Virginia area and you feel that you can relate to today's topic, it might be a good idea just to give yourself a break. Grab yourself a notepad and pen and listen in to what Rachel has to share with us today. So with that said, let's not keep her waiting any longer. Welcome to the show, Rachel.
Thank you, Stewart.
You are so welcome, my dear. I'm so happy to have you on the show. I know how busy you are over there. So let's just jump feet first in with our first question. If you could then briefly explain what types of people you serve and the various types of situations they find themselves in when they come to you for your help, please, Rachel.
Stewart, the people who come to me are scared. They are afraid. They are afraid of what they think they're going to lose, whether it's time with their children, whether it's a chunk of their finances that they've worked so hard to accumulate, whether it's their lifestyle. They're afraid of losing status. And we have a very large and cosmopolitan population here in Northern Virginia, and sometimes there are significant concerns about a loss of family honor and how a divorce might affect the people back home or the people here. So they're afraid. They're afraid of the uncertainty of the future and what could happen to them.
Well, let's see how we can help those people today then, Rachel. Before we go any further, however, it must be said that anything you share with us today is not legal advice or legal assistance. It's purely for the purpose of sharing information. Now, with that said, then, Rachel, I'm sure while you're out there helping these people who are so scared and they come to you for your help, they often come to you with preconceived notions of information they believe to be true. So there are misconceptions, there are myths, there are untruths, and you have to spend quality time to debunk those misconceptions before you can actually get to helping those people. So with that said then, Rachel, what's the most common misconceptions? And I know there's going to be hundreds of them out there, but what's the most common ones that come across your table while you're out there helping these people?
Not everyone hates each other just because they are getting a divorce. People think supposed to raise their hackles and fight, but really, I see people showing such kindness and tenderness. Sometimes I wonder in my mediations and some of them why they're getting a divorce, because really, not everybody hates each other just because they're getting a divorce. And another misconception is that litigation is a good way to resolve a family dispute. But quite honestly, litigation is a very old-fashioned way to resolve a family dispute. So that's why it's so important at the outset to choose the right path. Do you need to stand up and fight, or can you sit down and work it out outside of court?
Right, because every situation is not the same, right?
Absolutely. Sometimes people do have to protect their future financial security. They need to be able to live and afford to pay their minimal or regular expenses. Sometimes we have to protect a business or professional practice. Sometimes children need to be protected. And sometimes, quite honestly, on occasion, it's a matter of personal safety because, yes, at times a breakup can bring out a lot of anger and control, and sometimes we have to go to court and get restraining orders and whatnot. But very often people can sit down and create a new two-home family. His or her ex-to-be can sit down with my client and one or two attorneys, and we make a new life plan through out-of-court settlement.
So based on what you just shared with us then, Rachel, and obviously keeping your client's confidentiality in mind, Please share an example of how you've helped someone, maybe an individual or even an organization, who came to you with those challenges, that misconception you just mentioned, and what kind of transformational results you were able to gain for them.
Sometimes a lady will come to me and say, my husband is telling me that his lawyer's saying that I'm going to take him for everything he's got. So he feels like he has to fight me because I'm going to take him for everything he's got, which I'm not. So it's really a matter of trying to convey to the other side, look, calm down, let's have some trust building here. Don't have all this fear. We're not going to keep the kids from you. We're not going to take you for everything you've got. We want a fair and equitable settlement or litigated result, but just relax. It's not as bad as you think. Often people are just too scared.
So, Rachel, today's topic, as a reminder, is how do you decide whether to litigate or settle? Now, with that in mind, and for those divorcing couples who are out there listening in and wanting to know more, what's the most common but unknown pitfall that they need to be aware of, no matter what situation they find themselves in?
There's a very small percentage, Stewart. I would say it's 1% to 2%, but there are so many divorce lawyers out there. 1% to 2% of divorce lawyers is still a bit more than a handful. There are some lawyers who do not have their clients' interests at heart. They want to throw gas on the fire. They're not as concerned about the children. They're not as concerned about minimizing and not maximizing the cost and acrimony of divorce. And they'll tell a lady to fabricate some sort of abuse charge, or they'll tell a guy or a lady to fabricate a child protective services charge, or otherwise increase the acrimony and cost of litigation unnecessarily. Those lawyers should be avoided because they're only harming the client and the family. This is not a winner-take-all situation in family law. We've got children. We've got a two-home family that is going to be created. It is important to keep things calm. Or if somebody's personal safety is truly at stake, then yes, we do need to get protective orders and we do need to go to court and put those safeguards in place. But the thing to watch out for is a lawyer who will unnecessarily say things like, he, she is going to take you for all you've got. He, she is going to take your children away from you. He, she is going to do all these terrible things, and you have to protect yourself. You should get, you deserve. He, she should pay. The court can award you all these things. And sometimes people tend to hear what they want to hear and not hear what they don't want to hear. So it might be a good idea sometimes to get more than one opinion, but to consider attorneys who only want to litigate. You know, there's a saying, if all you've got is a hammer, then everything's a nail, and that's all you're going to do. So it can benefit people to get a few different perspectives and to evaluate things from more than one point of view, because there are attorneys who will only drive people towards litigation. And a litigated case here in Northern Virginia could be $20,000 for a custody case, $50,000, $80,000, $100,000 each for a fully litigated case, and very few attorneys will tell people in that first meeting that that's what the cost will be, but that's what the cost will be. So if we can work things out and not spend all the family fortunes on law firms, sometimes that right there can be a very helpful incentive for people to sit down.
Let's not wander from the track here, because you've just shared some excellent insights, some red flags for the listeners to watch out for while they're out there looking for a professional to hire and to help them out. So let me just play devil's advocate for a moment. If I am an individual who's in a divorce and I'm out there looking for a professional like yourself, a family law attorney, a family law litigator and mediator, whatever the case may be, what are one or two questions that I should ask that professional to help me determine whether to move forward or not? So in addition to the red flags that you've already shared with us today, which is absolutely fantastic information, what questions should I be asking that attorney?
Stewart, when you said one or two questions, right there, that's a problem, because when somebody calls my office, they will start with my assistant, and she will screen them as to whether they might want to sit down and mediate or whether they need to protect themselves and have individual representation. Because if I get on the phone with that person and start talking about their situation, their spouse might feel that the well is poisoned and I'm on that person's side. So what we will find out, so if someone comes to me for individual representation because They don't understand the process. They don't know their rights. They don't know what steps they should take. I need about half an hour to an hour to assess their situation, assess the level of acrimony, the need for protection, if any, the degree of cooperation, what the relative bargaining power is. I will meet with that person for a full hour before I make a recommendation as to which way we should go. Maybe we should try a collaborative case. But when my assistant talks to them initially, what I hear her asking all the time is, do you and your spouse feel like you can sit down and talk? And sometimes people will call us and say, we don't want to have a big fight. We think we can work it out. We just need some help. Can you represent both of us, which ethically attorneys are prohibited from engaging in what's called dual representation. So we can't advise two people, but we can mediate. So if somebody calls us and they're saying things like, we think we can work it out, we get along, my assistant will talk about the mediation process. But if they feel like they can't speak for themselves in a mediation, they can't advocate for themselves, they need somebody to kind of guide them, then we talk about the collaborative process, where we're committed to settling, we're not pretending we're going to go to court, it's respectful, we're not making threats, but each side has an attorney in the room, and all four of us are sitting down and working it out. But if they say, oh, my spouse is taking money, she, is angry, is having an affair, and does that impact anything, and I don't know what to do, I need advice, that sounds like somebody who needs individual representation. However, that person could come for individual representation and then go to a mediation armed with facts and knowledge and child support guideline calculations and other bits of information so they can meaningfully participate in a mediation where they have the attorney in the background. So, Stewart, there are so many options for alternative dispute resolution as opposed to litigation, many different ways to go about it, and that's what we evaluate in that 1 hour initial consultation.
So after that 1 hour consultation, do you have a 360-degree approach to helping that client? So if they need mediation, you can help them with that. If they need litigation, you can help them with that. If they need collaboration, you can help them with that. Is that all in-house, or do you work with other partners that can help also?
Once a person sees me for individual representation, I can no longer mediate with that person because I am on their side. There's an ethical problem with that, but I could send them to another law firm or to a colleague for mediation. If somebody comes to me, and I've had this happen, where they want to negotiate or litigate, but then it turns out collaborative might be the better thing, then they can retain me for the collaborative process, as does their spouse retain another attorney for collaboration for them, and then the four of us get together. And sometimes we, start litigating, and then eventually we settle through negotiation. See, there's really four paths: litigate, negotiate, collaborate, or mediate. And what I don't think people realize, Stewart, 97% of all civil suits, 97% of divorce suits, anecdotally, at least 97% of divorce suits in Northern Virginia settle. It's really a question of how far along the process do you go. Do you understand you'll settle right from the outset, or do you start the whole litigation dance, spend tens of thousands of dollars, and then finally settle?
Right.
So it's really almost always a question of how far are you going to go before you settle.
How far you are willing to leave your emotions at the door, because that's what takes you down that rabbit hole, right?
And how long will you feel like an attorney is telling you, oh, we have to do this, we have to do that, and you're going along with it? And I don't mean to badmouth attorneys. Again, it's a very small percent, but that percent is out there, and it's upsetting when we see cases get pushed towards litigation that really don't need to go there, and it only ultimately hurts the children or the finances of our clients. So I personally think if people can get along, it's a much better process to mediate or collaborate. But again, if you have to stand up, if your personal safety is at stake, if you need to set boundaries, Sometimes we'll see people, I'm not a therapist or psychiatrist, but we'll see some traits of borderline narcissistic personality disorder, and there maybe it's all about setting limits and teaching your children how to set limits. And then it is appropriate to take a much firmer stance. So there are certain questions that experienced attorneys will ask their clients in evaluating which way to go in the divorce process. Does your spouse always insist on having his or her way? Is everybody on their side or against them? Friend or enemy? They're better than everybody. They don't feel anybody else's pain, but they want everyone to acknowledge their pain. Do they have a substance abuse issue? If the answer to all those questions is yes, I'm going to think, I'm so sorry to tell you, but there's a very strong chance no matter what you do, you're going to be headed to litigation because your spouse will not settle for something that's fair. And if they have the money and they want to make you pay or whatever for leaving them, even though they are abusive and they feel wronged, there are some people who will make it very ugly, and often those are people with certain mental health traits, disorders, or substance abuse issues. You just can't settle those cases.
Rachel, this is such great information that you're sharing with us today. I'm just so appreciative of you coming on to the show and spending quality time to share such great insights with our listeners. So I really want to thank you for that before we move on. That's great. Thank you so much.
You know, it's a sad thing when a family breaks up, and when my clients come in, the first thing I tell them is I'm sorry for your situation. But at the same time, it is absolutely an opportunity for personal growth. It can be liberating, but then again, I also have clients from parts of maybe India, Pakistan, whatnot, and they know if they're getting a divorce in some cases where people from the village, their parents perhaps, still are thinking in perhaps more old-fashioned terms when times were different. Their family may decide they don't want anything to do with them anymore if they get a divorce, but it might be the right thing to not be abused anymore and move forward. So it can be a gut-wrenching, life-changing, but liberating thing, as an example to children, that you need to end a marriage at times, whereas historically, maybe when a lady didn't work in a part of the world where she did need protection, you don't leave your spouse, but things are different now. So it can be liberating, it can be freeing. Someone might be setting a great example for their children, but then again, it can also be a very life-changing and difficult experience.
Absolutely. So, Rachel, you've shared so much great information so far. Let's take a few moments to talk about you. So let's talk about you in terms of your background and your formal education and your experience as it relates to the topic of family law. So if you could just go ahead and just share a little bit of your backstory so the listener can get to know a little bit more about you. That would be great. Thanks.
In terms of my profession, I've been a practicing family law attorney litigator since 1990. I've had my own practice since 2005. I've been continuously certified for and mediating since 2001 with certification to mediate at the highest circuit court family level. And I believe, Stewart, I'm the longest continually certified attorney mediator in all of Loudoun County. I completed my collaborative training in 2005. I'm a member of various professional organizations addressing divorce dispute resolution, and I do speak professionally to various groups about divorce. I've authored articles, including magazine articles and book chapters on family law, and I did write a book called The 4 Ways of Divorce, which is on Amazon. And lastly, I've been fortunate to receive numerous recognitions for the quality of my representation of my clients' interests, and all that's available to look at in either LinkedIn or on my website.
Fantastic. So finally then, Rachel, just picture, if you would, the kinds of people who come to you for your help. They're needing guidance and they're wanting to know more about how to make the right decisions on whether to litigate or to settle. Now, with that picture in mind, Rachel, what would be your final thoughts that you'd like to share with those listeners before we move on to our final question for today?
I think the best piece of advice or tip that I could give someone is to understand that how he or she addresses and deals with conflict and adversity is an example to your children, a reflection of your character to others, and is part of your personal growth. So someone can either conduct themselves with dignity, strength, and compassion, or can demonstrate vindictiveness, weakness, and pettiness. And I would suggest opting for the former, which can and might include establishing proper boundaries for protection. It's all about how you look at your circumstances. These circumstances do not define you. It's a journey. We're creating a new two-home family. We're creating a new life plan. And how you conduct yourself through adversity is a very important example for your children and really a part of your personal growth.
So if someone feels they want to know more about how to make the right decisions when it comes to litigation or settling, what's the best way to find you, Rachel? How could they reach out to you?
Simply through my website, www.virk-law.com. That's virk-law.com, or Rachel, Rachel, Virk, V like Victor, IRK. Just Google my name and you will find me in Northern Virginia.
Fantastic. So I really feel we're only began to scratch the surface of the amount of great insights that you could have shared with us today. But unfortunately, we are out of time. So, ladies and gentlemen, once more, that was family law litigator and mediator, Rachel Virk. Thank you so much for sharing so generously with us today, Rachel. You have certainly, without a doubt, hands down 100 and I'd say 50% demonstrated that you are a true educator and advocate for your client's success. So thank you.
Thank you for inviting me to chat, Stewart, and thank you for all of the good work that you do.
You are so welcome, Rachel. And I'd like to say an even bigger thank you to our listeners, because without the listeners, we wouldn't have anybody to speak to. So thank you to you. Thank you to Joy for joining us on this very, what I can only describe as a very insightful and informative discussion with one of the leading family law litigators and mediators in the Northern Virginia area today. Again, that was Rachel Virk. Remember her name, make sure you do check her out, give her a call. I am sure you will be in a good place to get started. So that's it, folks. Again, my name is Stewart Andrew Alexander, and we'll be back shortly with some more leading family law professionals in this, our series of Let's Talk Divorce Conversations. So until then, take care, have a great day, and we'll talk real soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Impact Makers Radio. To listen to all past, present and future industry thought leaders and trendsetters, visit us at impactmakersradio.com.